your constituents and your chief misbehaves or does something wrong, which you think that he needs to move out, maybe to be investigated or something like that, there is nothing, because you find the chief stagnating in one place from the time Sabur was employed up to the time when he is retiring. That's maybe 40 years, 30 years. I think he is unable to transfer someone. It's good to transfer someone to want to do something elsewhere. And I think it will not be discriminative.
Whatever law that applies to achieve in Migori must apply to achieve in Marsabit or achieve in Nairobi or Mombasa. That law must be really uniform. For us as legislators, we must find what is the sort of common ground so that it doesn't cause any disquiet or it doesn't give the Ngao officers unmeasured authority where they can transfer chiefs willy-nilly, because they say that those powers it has been invested in them, but there's no ink on paper. So we need to really be very careful that are we making laws or are we trying to sidestep the law in some places where we find it is suitable?
In terms of the law itself, the Chiefs Authority Act was repealed. I think our legal counsel can tell us. When we came with the new constitution, a lot of those powers of the chiefs were removed. So the skeleton that remains now of the duties of a chief still restricted them to the locations. Because as chair, as you had rightly indicated, chiefs are recruited. One of the conditions is you must have been a resident in that location for a minimum of 3 years. And then, of course, the most important reason why chiefs are recruited within the locations and they operate there is for institutional memory. Because in the Ngao, that is National Government Administration Chair, officers are transferred at the higher levels. So a DO who comes, or a DCC or ACC who comes to the location does not understand the community, does not understand the culture, the practices of the people there. So it takes time to understand how to make decisions. And it is because it's one of the institutions that were established during the colonial days, because the colonial administration could not penetrate the communities and understand the workings. So to deal with them, whether you are managing security or development, you must be able to understand the people. Our cultural diversity is what makes this particular act insist on the chiefs being recruited from their areas, so that these are the people who will be briefing the other national government officers, the ACC, DCC, upwards, on the local situations, which are quite important in the administration. So I think whereas there is that aspect of merit, but again, as public servants, these chiefs are supervised. They are supposed to be strictly supervised. The ministry concerned has that hierarchy for supervision. And I think it should ensure that there is proper supervision of chiefs so that they deliver. They do not just operate on a personal level or personal vendetta to anybody. So the question now is that with that supervision, it can be improved even in Nakuru. It just points to the fact that maybe the supervision is not adequate for the chiefs in that particular area. So that is administrative. And then lastly, Chair, there's within the Chiefs Act, that is we have provision for the rules. Under Part 3, there's under Part 4 under rules, that the CS or the minister in those days may make rules for the better carrying out on the effect of the provisions. So where, for example, that administrative decision to start transferring chiefs within Nairobi, that is really the CS decision within the rules it's provided for in the Act. So in this case, then we may not see in the overall the need to actually change this and put it across the board for the transfer of chiefs, because there's a provision of that regulation. There's a provision that a regulation can be provided for to regulate some of those in areas where there's concern. Thank you, Chair.
Chair, I managed to work in Nairobi, where the chiefs are transferable. And it is working very well, because it is a county which is made of all the tribes and cultures and all this. But Chair, I would like you to imagine a situation where you transfer in Wajir, for example, where you transfer a chief from Aulia, from Degodia to Ajuran. Do you know there will be war? Chair, I have worked in those areas and I understand. And the only place I have worked in this country for, in many places, the only place where transferring of chiefs can work is Nairobi. Nowhere else. And you can even ask Mheshimiwa Honorable Arama, try doing it in Kisi. Bring a chief from Nyaribari to work, for example, in West Mugrango. It cannot work. So it is simply something which, even in Nairobi, we need to think about how to make it legal, because it doesn't operate on any legal basis. But thinking about those two scenarios, Chair, I think it is almost impossible. It works in Nairobi very well. It works in Nairobi very well, because of course we have many people in this country. But still there are issues, challenges, which I also saw in Nairobi, which can make officers also make decisions of appointing chiefs from one particular ethnic community, which is very dangerous. So they also need to have some guidance on how to recruit chiefs, even in Nairobi. But anywhere else, Chair, to me, because I have worked in these places, is almost impractical.
Mheshimiwa Arama, Chair, is lucky to belong to Nyamira County, and at the same time, he belongs to Nakuru County. And I know he's talking about Nakuru County because Nakuru County is heavily cosmopolitan area. It is cosmopolitan area, but we cannot equate it to Nairobi again. Nairobi is so populated and it is a cosmopolitan area where I know certain percentage of people also are under kind of movements, like maybe moving from this house to another house. You know, they cannot, some of them will not stay in a particular area for a long time. They will be moving, and they may not even be addicted, or they may not be attached to a particular chief, unlike rural area. So rural setup is different from urban setup. Maybe if we decide, or if Arama today will decide, out of our discussion today, we decide to come up with another kind of amendment that is almost related to what he has done, maybe from the way we are now discussing, it will be better maybe for cities or urban areas. But he will agree with me. He's coming from a cosmopolitan constituency, that is Nakuru Town West, where all the tribes are in Nakuru Town West, they are in Nakuru Town East, even in Bahati. Nakuru is a Cosmo area. So Arama I want you to imagine today, a chief is an officer who is attached to particular people. They are these are officers, government officers, under administration. They are so attached to the people at the community level. These are the people who will actually give the right information to the higher offices, from the national to location. The people we depend on informations are the community people. Chair, I can remember that President Mo used to call chiefs during his time, and he could even go down to even call a village elder. And that is why Moi understood Kenya more than any other person. And this is the reason. The reason was that he was calling direct chief for a particular location to find out what is happening at that particular place, in that particular place. And maybe you could go down to call a village elder. And this is the only way you can do proper networking in your country where you are governing. So I don't think the amendment bill Mr. Arama has brought is workable in rural areas. Maybe it will work in city like Nairobi and maybe other cities. And maybe Arama will now come up with another amendment, maybe to decide that in future, as we go ahead, we need to be moving chiefs or transferring chiefs in urban areas, unlike rural areas. Thank you.
Chair, I wish to agree with Mheshimiwa that surely, as he had explained, that if somebody is employed at the age of 25 or even 30, and then this person retires at the age of 30, after 60 years, of 60 years, this person will have stayed there for more than 30 years, which can really affect service delivery. And you know, when you do the same thing over and over, it becomes monotonous and tiring. However, Chair, I don't think this is practical, given the fact that some of the counties we live in are not homogeneous in terms of ethnicity. And I think that's the reason these particular chiefs and assistant chiefs are employed in those particular ethnicities. Because you find that in some far-flung areas like Marsabit, Turkana, Samburu, you will find people who don't even speak Swahili. And therefore, it will be easier for this assistant chief or the chief to be able to talk to this person because he comes from that particular ethnicity. So if you transfer one person, this chief or assistant chief, to another location or sub-location, they might have problems. Marsabit has, I think, more than 14 tribes in that particular county. So, and then you transfer one chief to another location where that chief doesn't speak the language of that particular tribe. How will it work in that particular case? So it becomes unpractical. Secondly, maybe Honorable Arama can tell this committee in his proposed amendment, is this amendment a money bill or not a money bill? Because once you transfer somebody, I've seen it in civil service, if you transfer somebody to another place, it attracts some allowances. Yeah, these assistant chiefs, these chiefs are not getting those allowances because they are seated in their home areas. So do you think this is a money bill? Have you talked to the budget committee to see whether there is availability of money so that when you transfer chief or assistant chief, these people can be paid those allowances? Committee allowances, disturbance allowances, all those allowances. Thank you, Chair.
I wanted also to thank Mheshimiwa Arama. I have had a proposed bill through some other committee, and I was frustrated. In fact, it never went through, and I was never given an explanation. So I would like to support him for whatever he has done. He has done a lot of work in doing research. And perhaps we may want to know what else, apart from these transfers, and what do you think can be done, at least for this bill, because you have really worked on it. And I know you have put a lot of effort. Thank you, Chair.
On the question you have asked, you have the proposed amendment at page 3, memorandum of objects and reasons. The enactment of this bill may not occasion additional public expenditure. But really that may not be true, because when you move somebody around with their families and with their chicken and their furniture, then you must compensate them. Honorable Arama.
I appeared before the budget committee, and we looked at all the reasons when you transfer an officer. We found out that when you transfer an officer within a certain kilometers, you are not compensated. Therefore, if, for example, it's within, that's what I said, this it is within the county where these officers serve. So it was not a money bill. There is no money which would be used, because it's a question of moving one officer, maybe from Nakuru town west to Nakuru town east in another location. So within that period, I think they said 40 within a radius of 40 kilometers, you are not paid any transfer allowance. That is one. Secondly, Chair, the issue of people not talking the language, such that if, for example, an assistant county commissioner has been brought to be in charge of a certain area, and it doesn't come from that community. Yeah, that's why we have Nyumba Kumi, and the Nyumba Kumi, those village elders, they must come from that area. And for them to be appointed in those positions, at least there are people of a certain standard. They talk they talk English and Kiswahili. I think, again, as the committee, I think you have powers of amending. I don't need to amend it myself. When you are going to do your report, you can amend and put whatever you think. If, for example, this Ajerura said we can have transferred in urban areas, just like in Nairobi, if they are doing it in Nairobi, then I'm not understanding why not in Nakuru. And if they are doing it in Nairobi legally, then as the committee in charge, you must make sure that it is stopped. Because if they are transferring in Nairobi, it's a city where we have every community. Then in Nakuru, where we have every community, they cannot transfer there. Then a member suggested that that's illegal. So if it is illegal, yeah, then we need to, you need to see as a committee and stop that illegality. Otherwise, yeah, I really think that, as honorable members have said, you can, you have the powers of putting more amendments so that we make the bill successive, because it will help some of us who come from urban areas. Yeah. Thank you.
Honorable Arama, should this matter, in your best understanding, be put in an act of parliament or regulations made pursuant to an act of parliament, as happens with other organizations? Number two, in terms of establishment of this what we call national government coordination or administrative units, there is a criterion called community of interest. And that community of interest, people think it is the interest of the community. That is not what it is, both in the Constitution and in the statutes where it is mentioned. It is these matters like the ones we are talking about, lineage, clan formations. And so that when you come to a place like Nairobi with what Honorable Lisa Chelule is telling you, first, you don't have settled residents who must be permanently there. Today, Kaluma is in Lavington, A sub-location or location. Tomorrow is in Karen. In fact, they have nothing much to do with, the chief. You get it? Now, in terms of community of interest, the law requires that when you are establishing units, including locations and sub-locations, it is one of the criterions to be considered. Now, how do you, in your view, have a clan of Kanyach, which I come from, established because of that community of interest, having a chief from Kalanya, with which we have hostilities from the same, constituency? Let us rationalize that. But lastly, Chair, it's about the location. As a committee, we have this problem that we have a law dealing with the National Government Coordination Act, where all these units are established, including the officers of those units, including the chief, in the National Government Coordination Act. And then somehow, the Chiefs Act under which you are proposing this amendment was forgotten in terms of repeal. So do we locate this amendment within the Chiefs Act, or if the committee were to approve it, we take it to the National Government Coordination Act, where all units are and their officers? I thank you, Chair. That would be just in terms of place. Regulations or which law?
I think, Chair, we are lawmakers, the chiefs, because when we say that we take it back again to the people outside there, that's why I suggested that we make a law like the ones in Nairobi. You can very clearly see that it's illegal for anybody in Nairobi to transfer any chief who was employed the way you have said, or the way the other members have said. Because if strictly it is that you must work and retire as a chief where you were employed, then in Nairobi, I'm not seeing why it is happening. It is happening in Nairobi because Nairobi has got several communities. They don't have a person like where you come from, your clan. But why should we not do justice to people who don't have clans in towns? I'm a member of parliament from an urban area. So if a chief has been employed, who is a Kisi, who was employed in Kaptembwa, and is not performing there, or there is something which is happening there, you can transfer to Nakuru Town East in the same capacity. Therefore, yeah, I think as a committee, you can go and decide whether we can amend and say, because in Nairobi transfers are being done, we can also say that in places like maybe Nakuru, places like Kisumu, where maybe every because we expect that in Kisumu, we already have people who speak one language. Still, you cannot put one person to work in a place for 30 years. That person will not be productive. But if, for example, members feel that in rural areas where maybe there would be a problem of language, that we need to have them not transferred. But in urban areas, I really feel
Point
that
of information,
it's good.
Chair. I just want to give Mheshimiwa Arama an information. I don't know whether it will assist him.
But you should have asked if he is really keen to
Yes,
get that information.
she comes from my county. I'm sure she's supporting me.
Okay.
Yeah, so that,
Thank you. Arama, I like what you're saying, but I'm happy you belong to two counties, Nyamira and Nakuru. And you've discussed about Nairobi. Do you know Nairobi, we don't have rural areas? Nairobi, the way it is, we don't have rural areas. Let me ask you a question right now about Nakuru County. Because Nakuru County, the city of Nakuru County is Nakuru Town West and maybe Nakuru Town East and maybe part of Bahati. Bahati is a little bit rural. But I want to imagine we pass this today, this kind of amendment, and a chief from Kuresoi, where I come from, is transferred to Nakuru Town West. It is not practical. Of course, it is not going to be practical completely. You know that, Arama. And I want to agree with you. In fact, I'm really in need to support you, Arama. As you've been advised by our legal counsel, Honorable Kaluma, maybe you can sit with him and then we develop something about this amendment that speaks about cities alone. And we now define what is a city.
the committee, I'm sure, it has the mandate of just making the reservations and putting the necessary amendments, the ones which Honorable Joruro wants to go and sit with the Honorable Karuma. I think it's too late for me to sit with Honorable Karuma now because already you have it. So with those good intentions, just go and amend it and make it better for us, for those people who come from the urban areas. Thank you, Chair.
There should be clarity between the transfers within the county and the issue of the money bill, because some counties are too large, like some Marsabit and Turkana. For you to travel to be transferred from Kapero to Kibich, which is 550 kilometers apart, will that not attract those allowances we mentioned? So maybe we can stick to divisions. These assistant chiefs and chiefs be transferred within divisions, but not within a county. Some counties are too big. Thank you.
Yeah, consultation with the committee, we have had you. The committee will look at what you have presented together with the views of the members of the committee, and will give you feedback in time, even in terms of what the committee will have proposed at the end.